much for having me.
Thought that we would start off. Well, I thought that I'd ask you to start off by just saying who is Jamie Gill and what is his mission?
Who is Jamie Gill? Is a good question. So I'm a strategic advisor in fashion and luxury in London, and I have a varied background in architecture, in management consulting, in venture capital, in scaling and running fashion and luxury brands, and now I'm a non-executive director at the British Fashion Council and taking a macro industry view. And my area of focus is how can we move the needle on making the industry more inclusive and representative from an employment level.
Excellent, very succinct. I mean, that is an elevator pitch, if I'm right.
I say at an employment level, I mean, from an employment perspective, I just think there's so much conversation happening around representation and inclusion in all industries, everywhere, and I think fashion is having it. We are definitely having it, but what I'm just not seeing, and where my laser focus on is, I really want to move the dial on employment. I want to see the data move to see that we have got more underrepresented communities that are employed by our biggest brands and as appointed freelancers and everything that makes up the wonderful fashion industry to move further forward. Because in the last 3 years we've been having this conversation, but I'm not seeing the needle move.
Yeah, any real action. So we're going to talk about more about the fashion industry about some of your initiatives as well. But I thought it would be great to know a little bit about your education and your career history and find out what got you here today.
Yeah, and I think, thank you. And I think it's so pivotal into why I've launched the Outsiders Perspective, and how I approach work, really, and all industries. I studied architecture at the offset and always wanted to become an architect kind of growing up. Well, initially I really wanted to study fashion. I think fashion was where I really wanted to go, but thought that architecture was a way of moving into a chartered profession that I could still have that creative flair. So really thoroughly enjoyed the education, and I think highly recommend anyone who's unsure what they want to do to really consider architecture at an educational level, because it touches so much. It's art history, it's physics, it's politics, it's economics, it's how do you it's technicalities of a building and how that delivers and services and funds itself and is funded, but also how is it touching society's heart, and what's its point of view. So super fascinating and interesting curricula, and I think really set me up for having a broad skill set and spectrum throughout my career. And then I think I worked in the industry, as I graduated in the thick of the 2008 financial recession, and was just struggling to earn a living, to be completely honest. The industry was hit really hard back then. There wasn't a need for an architect. It was seen as a luxury, and therefore firms weren't in a position to be able to, pay graduates fairly. So I was really just kind of struggling, was jumping around role to role to try and see, is this what I really want to do? And was disheartened, I think, to be completely honest, by what I'd been doing in education and the harsh reality of what the industry was like at that. I thought I was going to change the world as a grad architect, and it was a stark change from that, for sure. And then moved into finance. I was connected to a friend who was having a great time at Deloitte, really, and was doing the grad scheme there, and I just saw a career avenue there. I saw a career trajectory, is what I mean to say. And I doing my research around finance and how to enter and where to kind of move into, looking at banking, looking at accounting, looking at all the professional services, looking at all the business functions, and thinking, where would I best sit? And then seeing that most of I think 50% of the FTSE 100 CEOs were ACA qualified, from the ICAEW. And I was like, okay, there's something in that training, in that foundation there. And that's what I really wanted to do at Deloitte. So I did the training scheme, moved around different divisions, but specifically started building a client base in luxury goods. I was always fascinated by brand and luxury as a child, but now had this opportunity at a high level. At that level, when I was at Deloitte, it was very much at a high level to start being connected to those clients and having an understanding. So I did that, and I did that for about 4.5 years. Was at Deloitte, and then I had this itch still. I think after being in the corporate world for so long, I'd had this creative background and this creative side of me, and I now became a chartered accountant and had this had married both left and right side of the brain quite balanced in a way, and really benefited from having an architectural education at a corporate, and especially at Deloitte. They really welcomed that and brought a different perspective naturally with that training and that perspective in financial services, but really wanted to itch this fashion desire, and then decided to leave the corporate world and thought I'd be ready to set up my own brand. So left Deloitte and moved to India with a friend, and we saw an opportunity with the growing kind of Indian luxury bridal market out there that was dominated and is still dominated by a number of designers, and thought, is there an opportunity for a hybrid British Indian haute couture-esque brand that could sit at the highest level, that had this Indian craft with a European flair? So we designed a collection. My friend was the designer. He designed it, and we sampled it, and we went to the factories, and we developed a business plan, and we fundraised, and we got the collection in front of in front of clients, and etc. And just that was my real life go at setting up a brand and learning the hard lessons of how do you actually do this. And I look at it as my real life MBA, my applied MBA, really, and the personal challenges you go through in that personal development that it pushes you to actually have a go at doing something like that. For me, it reached a point where I couldn't fundraise it anymore and needed to kind of return back to London and get a kind of an employed role. So, it really showed that that's where I want to be. I was like, I've tried this, and I've tried this as an outsider and kind of looked at that market, and I really want to be in fashion, and I really want to be the CEO of a fashion brand. And then came back and was with headhunters looking for a role, and then was introduced to a family office venture capital fund, a family office fund that was investing specifically in British fashion and luxury, and they'd already invested in ROKSANDA. And I was like, oh, I knew who ROKSANDA was, and had admired her work for some time. And then challenge of, was I the right fit for that role, having not worked in VC before, but I could see my background in design and in business at Deloitte, and now especially going to have this entrepreneurial side of setting up a fashion brand. I was like, I'm a perfect fit. I believed I was a perfect fit to join as investment manager. So I convinced them and did, and then soon became an investment director and was sitting on the board of ROKSANDA, but was in a privileged position where we were getting access to so many brands who were looking for fundraising. So I would look at stress their business plans, look at their projections, and really learned what was working and what was working to scale a brand at that time, and understanding all of the different verticals. I was asked to mentor emerging designers at the British Fashion Council, and was doing that as part of the role as well. And then ultimately was asked by ROKSANDA to take over as her CEO. So then, after kind of impressing her, I suppose, with the work I was doing for the fund, and my learning and understanding, and my understanding of her business and what was needed to actually continue to scale ROKSANDA, I think she saw a CEO in me, and then therefore really took the risk to say, actually, Jamie, will you do this for me? And convinced everybody else, and then had an amazing 5-year journey with ROKSANDA, scaling that business, having a great time with her. We did amazing collaborations with Max Mara, Lululemon, Barber, Fila, and I think really continued, and I really believe, and I hope Rox would say this too, supported in positioning ROKSANDA as a headliner for London Fashion Week. She was always, around and was always there, but I think has cemented that. And I think anybody who looked at the British fashion landscape would, we would know Burberry, and you would know, of course, Vivienne Westwood and Stella McCartney and Alexander McQueen and Paul Smith. And then it is Victoria Beckham, and then is it very much ROKSANDA, it's Erdem, it's Simone Rocha, and had a really good time, and looked after all of that side of the business. And I think the work that I was doing with ROKSANDA and becoming more visible in the industry, I had all of the department heads from merchandising, sales, strategy, finance, HR, everybody, supply chain reporting directly into me, and had to really become an expert on the granularity and the detail of what was needed to run and scale a fashion brand, but still be macro and strategic and look at the global market place and our distribution and how we're really going to keep ROKSANDA at center stage really internationally. So it was a really hands-on role, and obviously managing the team. And on the back of that was asked to join the board of the British Fashion Council on the back of the BLM movement in September 2020. And initially my area of focus wasn't D&I or representation. I was asked to join on the back of the work I was doing with ROKSANDA and being that, designer brand and having that view on industry. And then as I saw a massive challenge with the industry, with talent and representation, is why I launched the Outsider's Perspective. And then after, in doing that, Caroline Rush asked me, she said, well, each board member is having a role, an active role for the British Fashion Council, and will mine be now representation. So now doing a lot of big piece of work that we'll be announcing in January next year on the strategy for DE&I on behalf of for British fashion.
Jamie, the energy that you have, it's just so impressive. I mean, I think it's incredible that you've got so many interests that, you started off your career in education, maybe doing the architecture, and then going off and doing finance because that interested you, and then the fashion. Then you've been able to kind of build on all of these steps to kind of create the career and life that you wanted. It's clear that you see opportunities, and you're a fantastic leader, which is why ROKSANDA saw it in you to appoint you CEO and on the board. You clearly know what needs to be done, and you can really see how a non-linear career route has supported all your career aspirations. Getting to the point where you are now, what would you like aspiring fashion moguls at, say, university or just starting an internship to know?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think anyone who's aspiring now, I think what's really key is skills. I say this, I just think it's really thinking about your skill set and your skill base. And as you just said, I did see what I wanted, and I tried. And you don't know, I don't think you really know what you want until you do it. Unless you're in a privileged position to be shadowing something so closely of what a role, and be yeah, really, that is it. And that's the conversation around privilege and industries that really not even benefit from, are highly where there's lots of nepotism, because you've been so close to it and think, oh, I really enjoyed what my father did, and I'm going to go and kind of do the same thing.
I agree. Sorry to interrupt you. I agree with you, but I think that some ways that can work because you are surrounded by it, and you do think that you like it, but at the same time you don't have the opportunity to experience anything else. So it's you don't know if you like anything else because this is all you've known.
Such a good point. No, 100%. And I think, yeah, exactly, because that's all you've known. And and I think the truth of the for me, I think it's really important. I really highly recommend everybody developing a professional skill set. And my professional skill set, I mean, is chartered professional skill set. I think any of of what has been traditionally any chartered professional, I think, gaining that and earning your stripes there because of the rigor and the level of, investment, like we were just speaking about what you're doing now, that what you've got to do to get those stripes from the institute, is so internationally highly regarded. So I'm such an advocate for all of our chartered professions and for the boards that administer them. But I don't think it ends there. It doesn't mean that you have to then go and take the linear career trajectory to be partner. To be completely honest, I think any professional services and law partner I've ever spoken to when they've retired wish they'd never done it. I wish I'd never done it. I wish I hadn't, I wish I'd gone and done something else. So I've never, from my experience, have ever heard, think of a consulting partner, an audit partner, or, a lawyer, maybe some areas of law, litigation potentially, but anything else when they've done it for their whole career, they then at NED, when they become NEDs and they retire, they're involved in the most creative, innovative, tech, whatever, future, exciting businesses to go and get that, excitement where they've had to, where it's been so I don't know where it's been so linear for their careers. And I recognized that when I was at Deloitte. I was like, okay, I can do this as a pathway to partner here. But then how am I going to itch this? How am I going to be innovative? How am I going to test? How am I going to really evolve? How am I going to learn? How am I going to get the benefits from other industries? How am I going to set my own thing up? How am I going to be a success at that? Where am I going to get the branding, the brand equity skill set to build that, the marketing side of it, the sales side of it as well? But you want that hard discipline, rigor of what business is, and to be financially astute and understand, relationships are so key in business to kind of, move things forward and actually activate things. I was like, I'm not going to get the opportunity to do everything I want to do if I just take the path in front of me to the traditional kind of partner route within professional services, because it's kind of set in stone. There's no way of, largely moving it around. You kind of have to go through the levels up, unless you kind of take a sidestep into something else. I that was my view on it anyway. And I kind of thought, at that leadership role, is that what I really want to be doing? But I'm going off. But your point around skill, what I would say now is I'm still an advocate for getting that hard skill set, and I think still, but then find that itch, find that passion, and you only find that from exploration and iterative process there, and doing your research and asking those questions and meeting people and understanding what you're excited by, if that's film, if that's media, if that is fashion, if that is the arts, if that is tech, if that is solutions and sustainability for a specific industry, whatever that is. I think you need to kind of go with it, run with it, but think about what you're bringing to the table. What is your bit, because you want to be something, you want to be bringing something additional and fresh to what isn't already there.
I mean, if people can harness, what you've just been speaking about, having that creative flair and really understanding it and knowing what they love, and making it and turning it into, their profession. Oh God, that just seems like, well, it's the dream job, and it's just a lifestyle that people should be living. No filter. So moving now more broadly, I suppose, into the fashion industry and ROKSANDA as well. Now, you have mentioned why you joined the board of ROKSANDA, but why specifically ROKSANDA, and what actions did you take to subsequently secure the role of CEO and then executive director?
I was young. I was 30 when I took over as CEO, and a business of that scale with around 50, 60 employees, I think we had at that time. It was and a famous business. If ROKSANDA, for those who don't know listening, is a very, if you're in the industry, who ROKSANDA is. Outside of the industry, of course, it's not big enough to kind of be a mainstream name in the same way as any of the Italian or French houses have. But it's very, prestigious in industry and very, very respected. ROKSANDA is a pioneer of fashion. She's a purist. She's setting trend that, the high street really takes suit to what she does with color and architectural forms and everything that influences design. You really see that influence really trickle down into the high street, and the high street, I don't think even is fully aware of where they've even taken it from. So I think she's such a purist in that regard. I think the advantage I had was that I took the role in the first place because I knew it was connected to ROKSANDA. I think if that fund hadn't invested in ROKSANDA, I wouldn't have taken that role. And that was the credibility of that fund. That was like, well, this fund must be good if ROKSANDA's allowed them to invest in her. So that was always my reason why I took that role. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. So I was like, they're getting the credibility on ROKSANDA's hard work. And then so there was always that connect. And then I just put my head down and worked really hard. I did it from a place of being in the fund. What I'm saying is I wanted to learn. I was like, I don't know, coming from architecture and then in finance, and I've had a go at setting up my own fashion brand, and my view was that it failed, but I don't know how a successful brand's actually operating in terms of, why is the margin this? Where are we sourcing our fabric from? Why does the supply chain work like this? Why are we marketing like this? Why do we need this fashion show like this? Why does it cost that much? Why do we need these processes in place? Why do we need to design in this way? Why do we need a sample collection? Why? Just as anyone would, from my perspective, I think if I was to go and do the same thing now in film or in any other industry, I have no idea why it operates in that way. So I have that curiosity, but just running with it and doing my own research. The research is sitting with people and asking the questions and reading and using Instagram, as anything in terms of point of references, or who's ROKSANDA following. Like, I'm going to follow everybody that she's following because clearly that's so influential to her. That needs to be influential to me. I need to be getting my juice and my knowledge base from her as a creative founder, as a creative director and founder. So it was, for me, I took it as really obvious. But now on reflection, even having this conversation with you, and when I'm asked to speak about it in interviews quite a lot, I do get that. I want to make that point that everyone doesn't think like that and actually go and do that. And it was all there for the learning. I had this belief, and I don't know where it kind of came from, and I still have this belief, to be, and this isn't relevant for everybody, to be a chief executive officer, and you've got all of those different business functions reporting into you, from finance to even head of design would, you'd have a, dialogue, and they would report in. Why and merchandising and sales, I needed to understand what their job was. I needed to get into the day-to-day. What are they doing? Like, what are their pressure points? What is the detail of their job? And I didn't know what a supply chain director was doing, and they've got their team underneath them. I need to know what they're doing and what their team's doing, what they're spending their time on, what their Excel is looking like, what their critical path looks like, and the granularity of everything that they're doing, and to be able to do it myself, in order to have them reporting to me and to kind of be their boss. And it was just something that I took with me, that I was like, if I'm going to have people reporting into me, I need to understand what they're doing and what their pressure points are. And in a way, I need to be able to do that job if I had to do that job. And I did. There was times where I was like, I have to jump in. We've got rotation happening with a candidate. Someone's left. We're looking to hire that role. And I got into the weeds. I got into the trenches of the granularity of the business. And I think that was really key, just to learn. And you do that quite quickly. Working 9 a.m. till 12 o'clock, sometimes working the weekends, of course, for a year. Yeah, of course. But after that, you've got it. And that sets you up so much then to really move the needle. So I think what, to my long-winded answer to your question is, I think ROKSANDA recognized that before, and that I worked in that way, that curiosity, backed up by hard work and research and putting the hours in, and doing the hard graft, and being humble about it, and just getting your head down and doing it from a point of, like, you want to be a CEO of fashion, right? You don't just no one comes and knocks on your door and be like, oh, we think you should do this. You've got to prove that you can do it, and you've got to know how to do it. And
you've actually got to want to do it, because I think that there can be times when people just think that they want to be, CEO or in the fashion industry. When it comes down to it, like, the want and drive is not there. But it's so impressive, Jamie, the way that you're clearly so passionate about what you do, and the asking questions just shows that you really do care about it. And fantastic that ROKSANDA welcomed you in and was really open to your questioning, and like asking why is it done this way, because again, there are businesses out there that don't like change and don't want to hear it and want to bury their head in the sand. So I've read that when you did become CEO of ROKSANDA, that you restructured the business specifically by assessing the skills that the company's employees already had, and then breaking down the department silos to make for cross-functional teams. Why exactly did you do this, and what was the outcome?
Yeah, I think what's always needed in business, I think what I mean to say is, I think specifically in fashion, SMEs aren't known for making money. The business doesn't really, there's generally an investor there that's supporting a long-term view that this is one day going to hit it and become the next Alexander McQueen and become a cash cow, and that's what's going to happen. This is how you do it. Mm-hmm. And this is why you do it, and this is what's done. And I think that outsider's perspective, that fresh perspective on everything, is why you can challenge the status quo. So just looking at it with fresh eyes and having done my research. So I think that's the other thing with this. I've done my work. I've done my homework. I've just done my homework. I've done my homework for years, in a way. That's not homework in that 1 year I'm talking about there. I'm talking about, I've been doing my homework through that fund. I was doing my homework when I did that startup. You're researching who's at the helm of British Vogue? Why are they at the helm of British Vogue? What's their point of view of British Vogue? What are they writing about? What does Anna say at American Vogue? Like, not just, oh yeah, no, it's just that. And that is that for me, is that consulting professional skill set is why you would challenge that when you look at a new industry. It's not coming from it from it's not looking at it from a starry-eyed kind of, and layman, if that is not to sound rude, but like looking at it from a naive perspective
Very
as
superficial.
yes, yeah, a surface level perspective, exactly. Is looking at it with from a strategic lens and immediately, and I think that's the training that that you have in professional services, particularly, that I was just applying to learning about a new industry. If that's what I really want to do, the passion and the itch and the desire was always there from a child, and maybe again, I really recognizing my privilege that I've had, that maybe I was really fortunate to have a mother who really supported my interests as a child. I like art, I like drama, I like fashion, I like whatever it is, like business. I don't like sport. I like whatever it is. She was nurturing that and supporting that and allowing you to thrive in that, buying you the paints, giving you the time, like that's, and taking you to the galleries, not with lots of money, but was really being able to fuel that. And I think that was always there. I was hit by what I could see as reference to fashion as a child from, just ad campaigns, growing up in the Midlands in a working class family. You had television and you'd see a Gucci fragrance campaign come on TV, and Tom Ford was at the helm of Gucci at that time. You're like, wow, look at how good looking everybody is. Look how sexy that looks. Look how glamorous that is. That's what I'm drawn to as a stark reality from my reality, a stark change from my reality. It was naturally drawn to something that's complete polar opposite. And I was like, I want that life in the city, that was so glamorous. So I had that desire and that passion from an early age. But I think I've just been pragmatic and logical about the steps needed to actually, and that's a long-term time, like to become, as much as I did it at an early age, that was in the works for some time. The steps one could argue, get a design education, yes, then get a business qualification, yes, go and try and have a go yourself, now understand the macro landscape of investing in these businesses and looking at it from that lens before you now jump in and then when you do jump in, you jump in right to the weeds and you get to the bottom and understand what our office coordinator is doing, as well as the supply chain director, and do that work and do that homework. I think is why I was then able to do that restructure. And then you look at it with what I'm trying to say is that informed view to be like, this isn't working. Our strategy isn't working around having 4 collections when we're running around like headless chickens on it. Our cost base is too high. We need to become profitable. We need to grow our gross profit margin. We need to do collaborations to grow our brand awareness. We need to increase our distribution. We need to really tell the story and the craft narrative that ROKSANDA's built. And we need to maintain our positioning, as a luxury house.
What is or are currently the biggest commercial threats to the luxury fashion industry?
Biggest commercial threats to luxury fashion right now, I think, unfortunately, we are an industry that is so susceptible to any variation in the macroeconomic movements of anything. We're any slight variation. We were struggling with Brexit. We were then struggling with naturally, the pandemic has knocked us for 6. We're now in with the cost of living crisis. We're now in a perma crisis. We're affected politically. We're affected by any decisions, that our government's making. They've revoked tax-free shopping for tourists in terms of VAT. That's really hit us so hard. We are, the cost of living, the interest rates, everything is really, fashion gets hits really hard, and luxury fashion does get hit really hard too. What is robust is true luxury. True luxury will do really well in these times. Those heritage true luxury houses that are bulletproof, Hermes and Dior and Vuitton and Cartier and Chanel will do really well now, and across sectors as well, so automobile and as well, what's true luxury, and that, you know, the wealth gap will get even bigger, and those brands will do really well. So I think we're really susceptible anyway. In terms of threats now going forward, I think the industry's threat, I don't think it's got its workforce right. I don't think talent is where it needs to be. I don't think versus other industries. I think other industries have been really smart. Think about what we're talking about law, professional services, the training scheme, the rigor in investment in L&D and education, and the need to put that investment into talent to teach you and pay for that, and to really invest in that. Look at the return on investment an organization gets in talent. You know, you will be an advocate. I'm an advocate for Deloitte for the rest of my life, for their investment that they put into me. The outsider's perspective, I ran to Deloitte to tell them what I'm doing here. When we were looking at fundraising with ROKSANDA and doing an M&A deal, I run to Deloitte. You know what I mean? I'm a lifer with that firm from what they've invested in with me. And I know, you know, my cohort of colleagues at that time are as well. You've got that. And I think other industries really understand that. We don't do that as an industry. We're seen as that we pitch ourselves as a creative space, yet 90% of our organization is commercial, operational, and marketing work, you know, to actually deliver in any fashion organization. We're the biggest industry in the fashion's the biggest of the creative sector. We contribute nearly 30 billion to GDP, to UK GDP. We're bigger than automobile, but I think we're a threat on the workforce, because why I say that is, if we're going to not have if we don't have the talent to drive, AI is coming in, you know, how are we going to react to that? Where are we? How are we moving the sustainability needle? How are we growing our commerce? How are we attracting and retaining customer? How are we remaining innovative? How is our business models reacting to it? They're all the obvious kind of threats. Like, where are we going to be in 10 years? Are we ready for Gen Z? Are we ready for that mindset? Are we ready for Gen Alpha? Are we thinking about how they're doing in their consumer behavior? And are we preparing ourselves for that? And is luxury fashion still, as it has demonstrated in the past, remaining too slow to adapt and waiting for everyone else to take the go before we take the leap and buy in and support the decision of any other macroeconomic development, not macroeconomic, sorry, any business strategic development that we've seen happen elsewhere? Will wait, and with a view that we're luxury fashion, you'll buy us, whatever, and an attitude around that is short-lived. That approach has worked for so long, but it isn't sustainable any longer, because it's not sustainable for where the growth in fashion and luxury customer is coming from. And I think that's a massive threat. We're failing to recognize on an industry level, how do we address that? People culture is your biggest P&L cost. It's your biggest thing that you have. So I think there's a real threat to not recognizing that we're looking at those, you know, business drivers that are going to impact us, and business direction, movement, and macro impacts. But it's the talent, it's the people that we need to have in place to be actually react and implement and deliver. No filter.
I thought now we could move on to the outsider's perspective. You mentioned it a little bit throughout the interview, but I was wondering if you could please explain to the listeners, what is the outsider's perspective and who is it for?
Yes, and I think that question, my view on the threat sets me up very nicely for the outsider's perspective. Basically, it is an organization that is bringing in outside talent from alternate industry to join the business of fashion and luxury in a simple sense. It's targeted at underrepresented communities, so specifically right now for people of color, but it's speaking to you know, people out there who have wished they've always could work in fashion and luxury, but are experienced hires and cannot get in, you know, because it's really challenging to pivot. And from our industry perspective, as I've just said, we need smart talent in in technology, in finance, in strategy, in law, in compliance, in tech, in HR, to actually really start to change the narrative and think differently about what the resource and what the skill set is needed to remain innovative as an industry and as an organization. Fashion is innovative, but if we don't have the skill set and we don't have the talent to actually think differently and create that innovation comes from elsewhere and is repackaged. So that's what we need, that talent to be bringing it in, and that's what the outsider's perspective does. So these candidates typically don't have industry experience. That's what we're looking for, but we train them up. We built a curricula. They go through effectively a crash course on what the practicalities are of working in fashion and what the nuances are of working in fashion. And we go through each business vertical from each operational business vertical, from marketing to sales to strategy to finance to sustainability to D&I to HR, to everything that's needed, digital marketing, etc. And each business pillar is facilitated by an industry figurehead. So we'll have the chief product officer from Alexander McQueen will speak about the merchandising function and the skill set needed to pivot from a non-fashion industry merchandising role into a fashion merchandising role, and what is specific and what the skills kind of needed there. And then they do a task kind of case study, our candidates do, and then we have an event where they meet all of our brand partners who are invested in us, who are actively looking to hire them. We've got an event happening next week, and we'll have Burberry there, Alexander McQueen, etc., Chanel, Lululemon, and as and when roles become available at our brand partners, our candidates get to apply to them with this ACE card that they're an outsider's perspective candidate, and for a role. And then my talent acquisition team works with the HR team to kind of really accelerate that migration of them coming into roles. So what we're saying to the industry, to the brands, is we are increasing your talent pool with skilled talent and giving you access to a talent pool that you would not normally have access to, that are now really wanting to move into fashion and are trained and prepared.
What an incredible initiative. It's just fantastic that you are helping to change these candidates' lives, but then you're also really helping the businesses by helping them secure this amazing talent in order to help them grow their business to even more success. So I think that's incredible. What makes a successful candidate application?
I think what makes a successful candidate application is with someone who really wants to be in the industry. I think it's someone who really wants to be in fashion. They've really got to want to be in fashion. They've got to be actively applying to kind of move in, and we're facilitating that migration for them kind of coming in. So that's really key. And they've got to be good at whatever they've been doing. So whatever industry they're in and whatever function that they've been working in, they've got to be good. It's a minimum 4 years that we look for from any candidate. And yeah, they apply. We do two cohorts a year of 25 candidates, and we're looking for those who really want to be in here and that can do a really thorough application to us, and we can kind of see that passion, that commitment, that understanding already that they've been building of the industry from the research that they've been doing. And then they go through a number of interviews with us to be shortlisted, and we want that commitment that this is what they really want to do. They've already made that decision, they want to pivot. We're just helping them get that role.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. What you have done throughout your entire career is phenomenal. You've achieved so much and still doing so much. At the end of the day, what does success mean to you?
I think success for us is that we can really the more and more brands that we can be working with, that we can start increasing their talent pool to for an underrepresented skilled talent pool, is us really moving the needle. If we can show for every role that they have out there where they're going to be looking for the traditional kind of the traditional candidate within industry that is of the same ilk and of the same profile will be applying, if we can show them an equivalent non-industry highly skilled talent pool who are specifically people of color, we're going to move the needle. That is going to, in time, that is really going to move the needle, and we're really really going to increase, a representation of skilled talent within the fashion industry, which is our main focus. And I think in doing that, that will really kind of propel us forward as an industry, is what we're really trying to do. And yes, it's all of our brand partners are global. So I think, other international markets are looking really key for us as well.
I'm just really excited to see this happen, because it seems like everything that you put your mind to, Jamie, you accomplished. So I'm extremely happy that you put your mind to doing this. As I said, I can't wait to see it happen.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks so much.